Judge Moran.
Thank you, Lee, and thank you to the Tyler Area Chamber of Commerce for this opportunity to talk about the state of the county. I'm excited to have this opportunity to visit with you today, and I want to start out with some thanks because there's a lot of people in this room that I need to thank. First, I want to start out by thanking Kim Carter and Casey Murphy, who put together this whole event on behalf of the county. So Kim and Casey, thank you guys for your hard work today. Second, I want to thank each one of you in this room because over the past 6 years as I've been the county judge, many of you in this room have interfaced with me, and together we have solved a lot of problems across the county. We've done, I think, a meritorious job of trying to tackle some very hard issues, things that you cannot tackle without great relationships, strong binding together, and a joint effort bound in common values. So I want to say thank you to each one of you. That was well said by Henry and Peters, that indeed it takes the whole community to make us successful, and I believe we are successful because of the work that each one of you is doing in your families, in your businesses, and then together collectively helping Smith County. Really pleased to be able to thank a lot of the elected officials that are here today, and we're going to get to a lot of them. I want to talk to you about some of the changes that are happening. We're going to have a lot of facts today. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to talk about some fun items, but there's some factual items. I want you to be informed about what your county government is doing. That transparency builds trust, and that trust then allows us to tackle those harder problems. We didn't recognize by name, and I can't do it by name, but I would like for all the department heads that are here today on behalf of the county to stand up because they're the lifeblood of what goes on in our county as well. And then I also want to tell you up front that I'm going to focus on a couple of words today, a couple of concepts. Those concepts being strength and courage. And before we leave today, I'm going to encourage you to be strong and be courageous in your individual lives and in your businesses and in supporting what goes on in the county. But let's talk about what's going on in the county in particular. Let's start with the most recent item that we've been dealing with, and that's redistricting. Many of you know that we all went through redistricting here this past year. So I want to tell you how that impacts your lives in particular on the county level. Over the past 10 years, the census tells us we went from 209,000 individuals to just over 233. I think Ed Broussard and I would agree that it's more than that it's undercounted. But it was about an 11% increase, which significantly outpaced the rest of East Texas counties. As a result of that, we needed to have some redistricting among our county commissioner precincts. Not the justice precincts where the JPs and the constables are. We don't have to do that, and many have asked that question. But among our commissioner precincts. So here is just a little snippet of the changes that were made in the commissioner precincts. As you can see on the left, that's where we started before we had to balance out those population gaps. And there were some pretty big gaps. On the right, you'll see the new precinct lines, and the shaded areas are areas that are now taken in. In particular, you're going to see that precinct 1 and 4, precinct 1 gave up some to precinct 4, and then on the other side, precinct 3 gave up some to precinct 2 to help balance out our population growth. Where did most of the growth occur in the last 10 years? Well, it occurred in precinct 1 and in precinct 3. In precinct 3, you can really thank the Lindale area, and we got a number of the leadership from Lindale here today, the mayor and the economic development folks and the chamber folks. Great economic development along I-20 and along the Lindale corridor. That growth spurred a lot of population growth in precinct 3. So we need to shed some of that off. In precinct 1, that comes as no surprise. You guys know the southwest part of the community is really growing, vastly outpacing the rest of the community. So we needed to repopulate some of those individuals. And that's how it got repopulated. So if you didn't know what precinct you're in, you now know. That's who represents you going forward, and that begins January 1st of next year. To rebalance some of those populations, you see the beginning and the ending. You see the blue, the beginning numbers, and really it went from 64,000 at the peak in precinct 1 down to just about 52 in precinct 4, about a 12,000 person gap. So we had to realign those. But what we tried to do was also take into account the rate of growth so that over the next 10 years, you're going to see a rebalancing. So as we rebalanced it, and the commissioners approved this, you'll see that now the two smallest were then the two largest. Precinct 1 and Precinct 3 now have the smallest, down to 56,000. Why? Because those are outpacing on the growth, so that when we get about midpoint, you're going to have about equal distribution through the end of those 10 years. We think that's smart planning, and that's what we're trying to do at the county. 2022 elections. So 2022 elections are going to bring about a lot of change in January. And you need to know about that change today. The thing that encourages me is something that we talk about with our employees. Esmeralda Delmas will tell you every month when the new employees come through our employee orientation, I talk to each one of them about two concepts. That's the concept of equal and eternal value. And I say, hey, look, you're ambassadors for what we do. Every one of you that are coming through our doors as employees, you're ambassadors, and if you will treat everyone with equal and eternal value, we're going to be fine. You're going to be great ambassadors for the county. The elected officials, the department heads we have here today, do that, and do that with great success day after day. And I appreciate all that they do to treat everybody with equal and eternal value. But we're going to have some changes next year. So what are those changes? Just so you know. Oh, you knew I was going to show this, didn't you? Anybody that has seen a presentation from me knows that I'm going to show this diagram. And I'm pretty convinced that I want this diagram on my tombstone one of these days. On the left is every decent form of organizational structure in the world. It's the pyramid, right? On the right is how the legislature in 1876, not Senator Brian Hughes, not Cole Hefner, not Matt Schaefer, they didn't have anything to do with the right side, but those legislative individuals in 1876 said, you know what, we want to set up a form of government where it looks like the Parthenon, not the pyramid. We want to have silos of authority so that everybody reports directly to the constituents and nobody reports to one another. At times, I can tell you, that becomes a little frustrating. It becomes a little frustrating, but it's okay. That's the form of government that we're given. That's the form that we work under. So each one of these elected officials has a statutory duty, and we all try to stay in our lane and do that to the best of our abilities. That's our goal, is to bring value to the citizens each year and with every tax dollar, because at the end of the day, it's your money. It's your tax dollars that we're using, and we need to use it for your benefit and give the highest value to it. So who's going to do that next year, beginning January 2023? First change is, as you know, this is the end for me. I've got to the end of this year, and then Commissioner Neil Franklin's coming on, Judge-elect Neil Franklin, and we're happy about that. Besides being a better golfer and having better biceps and being better dressed, Commissioner Franklin, I'm just going to tell you, is going to be a fantastic leader for the administrative side of the county, and we're so excited to have you in that position, Commissioner Franklin. We're also going to have three new members of the Commissioners Court. 4 members, 3 of the 4 are going to be brand new. Terry Phillips is going to be the only one still sitting in the same seat. Congratulations, Commissioner Phillips, you survived the 2022 elections. But the remainder are going to change. So when Commissioner Franklin moves over, Pam Frederick, the mayor of Bullard, who's here, is going to take his spot. And then Carrie Nix and I are finally going to find a time to go play basketball and settle that score once and for all. And John Moore is going to come on from the southeast part of the county. So John, welcome to the party. And finally, new on Commissioner's Court, you heard from him to begin with, Reverend Ralph Carraway, who, if you don't know, is an individual of the highest character and leadership in this community. He and I began serving together on the city council, decades ago, it feels like now, and you will find tremendous leadership in Reverend Ralph Carraway when he comes on board. And then we've got a runoff still to decide who's going to take the Constable Precinct 2 position between Wayne Allen and Chris Roberts. That's going to be decided in a couple of months. And then soon-to-be Judge-elect Clay White is taking Judge Floyd Gett's position in County Court of Law number 3. So we're excited about Clay. And then for the 241st District Court, we have Debbie Gunter, who's coming on board to be our new district judge. She's gonna be handling those really tough felony cases, and we're excited about that. And then Derek Choice is coming on for our Justice of the Peace, Quincy Beavers. Derek was also somebody I served with on the Tyler City Council. Mayor, wherever you're at, thank you for all this great talent. We appreciate that. Yeah. And then Judge Mitch Shamburger is retiring, and Curtis Wolf has won an election to take his spot in Winona. And so thank you, Curtis, for your willingness to serve. It's probably the biggest transformation of leadership in the county in more than probably 3 decades, I would imagine. There's a lot of change that's going to happen, and that's why I wanted to start with that today, because you need to be aware of who's coming on, and you need to be supportive of those efforts, because everybody, as I came on the first year, Nelson Clyde told me, look, before you try to do anything, get your head under the hood and figure out how this car works. And it was great advice, and it takes time to learn how to do that. They need time, and they need support, and they need your guidance to be able to be successful in their positions. But a lot of that change comes because we've had some wonderful leadership for decades that has now decided to retire. And I want to recognize these individuals. I'm going to call your name. I want you to stand, and we're going to give you a special applause. Judge Jack Skeen, 40 years of service to Smith County. Judge Mitch Shamburger, Judge Quincy Beavers, Judge Floyd Getz, Commissioner Joanne Hampton, and Commissioner Carrie Nix. Would you guys all stand too? We want to. Judge Shamburger, I wanted to go back and see what your salary was when you first started. I really wanted to know that. We should have $16,000 a year. Well, I'm glad we've increased it a little bit since over the past 40 years. Listen, for anybody to serve in public service this long, it takes a special person. It does. It takes a special person to serve their community. And so catch these folks before you leave today and thank them for their years of service, because it's not easy. Mistakes have been made, no question about that. We are all human. But I tell you what, those folks served with a lot of honor and a lot of distinction, so thank you. All right, speaking of honor, integrity, and security, let's talk about elections. Because we've had these elections, you know what's going to change. I want to talk to you about the things that we are trying to do to become secure in our election cycle, because it is very important that you have confidence in our elections. Now, we have an acronym. Michelle, where are you at? Michelle's here somewhere. Michelle, stand up. This is our elections administrator. And Michelle will tell you that we have a S.A.L.T acronym that stands for Secure, Accurate, Legal, and Transparent. That's the way we want our elections. We want to be sure that as we go through the process of allowing the opportunity to vote, that we do it in a way that's secure, that's accurate, that's legal, and that's transparent. And I think I want to add a Y on the end of that, make it salty. We want salty elections. And the Y stands for you, because you're a large part of that. From a security standpoint, here's what we've been doing in the county over the past couple of years. We have now a lot of increased physical security. We've now dedicated the entire hub to the elections office. We've got monitors on the doors to know who's going in and out of what areas within and without the elections office. We've got new security protocols in place. We've got new walls up to make sure that it stays secure. Our hybrid equipment helps with security as well. What do I mean by hybrid? You guys hear this all the time, and I'll just tell you, election integrity, it's an issue we got to tackle. The legislature tackled it. We started working on it 4 years ago. We want to be sure you have confidence in your vote. We want to make sure that the confidence that when you place that ballot in there, it's getting voted the way you wanted it to be voted. That's what we want to do as the administrators of that. So we have a hybrid system. It's both paper and electronic. What does that mean? That means we have paper ballots and that we have an electronic system that counts it, but we always have a paper backup, and that means we can always audit that trail. We can always, if we need to, look at every one of those ballots and count it. And we do, in fact, as you see under accurate, election audits. We get randomly told you need to pick a certain number of precincts, 3 precincts and up to 3 races each election cycle, and we go through and we hand count every one of those ballots to make sure it matches with the electronic version of what the count is. So you can be assured that when you hear about problems with security, we're doing as good as we can to make sure that they're secure and they're accurate, and that paper ballot backup remains true so that we can always go back and count. We've done an audit of our voter records, which we're going to talk about in a minute. We're going to highlight our GIS department, our new GIS department, which has done a total review of voter rolls and locations and boundaries to make sure that everybody's voting for what they should and they don't get to vote for something they shouldn't. We have video surveillance if you look at the ballot counting room, it's one of those deals where if you were really tired at night, you could watch this 24 hours a day. If you didn't know, there's a YouTube channel that we dedicated from the time that election night happens until the time the ballots are canvassed. There's a constant video showing this room where the ballots get counted. So you can sit at home and watch who's coming in and out of that room and what's happening with those ballots. And if you want to do more than that, look at the transparency. We've got this big window that we cut out as we built this new room. You can actually come and just stand there and watch. You can see how it happens. We don't want to hide anything there is that's going on with respect to elections. We encourage poll workers, which is the you part. We want you to be involved. If you want to watch the polls, if you want to be part of the pre-election public tests for equipment that we do, you can do that. We want to be completely transparent about how our process works. We will always strive for getting that better and doing more than what is minimally required, and that's what we have done. And so if you know of a way we can improve, we want to do that because Michelle and her team are top notch. I would put them against anyone in the state right now for an elections administration office, and I appreciate the leadership she's brought. So thank you. That's election integrity. Yeah. Now, part of that was this GIS function. We added in a GIS person, Phil. Where you at, Phil? Phil's right here. Phil is our GIS guy, trained well at the city and was able to come over and transition to us and has now started our first GIS department. And for the last 10 months, when he walked in, like a week after he walked in, Michelle came in and I had him in my office. I said, you got one project until it gets done, and that is make sure our voter rolls are right and the lines are right. And so for 10 months, he's been doing that. And that helps us in our redistricting process to lead up to changing those lines. And it's a continuation effort on our part. Soon you're going to have something before the end of the year where you can check online specifically your pinpointed house. You can see all the different layers of information that relates to you, and you can call us and say this is right or it's not right, or maybe you thought you were in a precinct and you really weren't, and you're going to find out you're in a different precinct. That's why the ballot wasn't the way you thought it was. Phil right here is the guy that's doing that for us, and he's done a lot of heavy lifting over the past 10 months. So thank you, Phil, for that work. Roads and bridges, if I don't know, if I don't get the pyramid and the Parthenon on my gravestone, maybe we can put a road grader on there, because you guys know how passionate I am about roads and bridges, and so I want to go over that with you. If you didn't know what we've accomplished and what we are currently doing with roads and bridges, you need to know that, because roads and bridges are the lifeblood of economic development. Without infrastructure in place to precede that economic development, the growth that's happening in our county can't happen. Most of the growth that happens in our county, if you didn't know it, happens in the unincorporated areas. It doesn't happen inside the city limits. There's so much constraint about how cities can grow now that most of that growth for businesses and for residential areas is happening outside of the incorporated areas. That can't happen if you have a county road that can't sustain a new development or a new business. We have to have that groundwork laid, and we're proud that we've been able to do that. So how did we do that? We did that in those two phases that you guys passed. Road bond number 1, which is back in 2017, passed by 73%, a remarkable achievement, and thanks to many in this room. And then road bond number 2 passed just this last November at 63%. Incredible numbers that suggest you really do understand that $15 a year for the average taxpayer for new roads and bridges is important. In that phase 1, which we're about to finish, almost 200 miles, linear miles of our 1,200 miles of road system in this county were either reconstructed or repaved. Phase 2, 283 miles are planned for that. And I've told Frank, whatever he does, he needs to find 17 more miles because I want to get to 500 miles. I don't like the number 483, I like the number 500. So we're going to find a way, or we're going to kick Frank to the curb. We won't do that, Frank. We're going to find a way to get to 500 miles. Think about that. In about a 7-year time period, we will have repaved and reconstructed. We're not talking about like just the maintenance stuff. We're talking about reconstruction or repaving 500 of our 1,200 miles of county roads in Smith County in less than a decade. It's an incredible achievement that I think speaks to volumes to the need that we had and the willingness to provide the funds, because again, they're your funds. So thank you for that opportunity to be good stewards of that for the taxpayers, because that's going to bring back dividends. Because as those businesses come in, what happens? The valuations go up. We can keep the tax rate low. We have more businesses that can provide sales tax revenue that, again, keeps the property taxes low. That's important for all of us. We're trying to do that. That's where we stand right there. 200 miles to 283 miles. Precinct by precinct, here it is. You're going to have almost 130 miles done in precinct 1 in those two phases, and in precinct 2, almost 90 miles done, and in precinct 3, you're going to have over 200 miles. That's Commissioner Phillips' precinct right there. It has more than 40% of the road miles anyway. We were able to give some of those to Commissioner Nix in this redistricting area, which I'll talk about here in just a second. But 200 miles that we're redoing up there so that folks can get safely to and from their businesses, so that they can get safely to and from schools, they can have traverse for economic interests. And then in precinct 4, under the original map, that's going to be 70 miles that have been done of the 144, almost 50%. I'm going to remind you of this fact if you have not heard this, but it's true, and I want you to remember this. In that first year of our road and bridge program, we repaved or reconstructed more miles in this county than had been repaved or reconstructed in the entire decade before. That's significant. That is us hopefully being good stewards of what you've asked us to do with your money. And we feel confident that's true because then you voted to give us more money to do that. And that's important. So the road miles per precinct, that was also a helpful guide as we went through redistricting, because remember we shifted some of the geography there, and that was helpful because when you saw precinct 4, it was really the smallest geographic area and had the smallest number of road miles. Well, it gained about 60, while precinct 1 lost about 60. They traded those off when we shifted that population. And then precinct 3, which is the north area, gave up about 25 or 30 or so to precinct 2 down in the southeast. So it tried to balance out actually the road miles. That helps the commissioners going forward too, because there's more kind of evenly distributed work as it relates to roads. And that's where a lot of the calls come in from these days for those folks. Not just the roads are we taking care of, but the road and bridge facility is something we need to take care of. And this is a new project that you haven't heard about. And if you have, you probably haven't heard about it in a concise, kind of summarized measure, because we talked about this for a couple of years. A couple of years ago, I showed these pictures in court and said, look, we've got to do something about our road and bridge facility. This thing was built in the 1950s. 1956 or 57 was when most of the construction happened. And in 1957, we moved into this facility. And in the early 1970s is the last time that we had any significant reconstruction over there. That facility needs to be upgraded. Why? Because we need to be more efficient. Not because we want a prettier building and not because we need a better office, but because we can be more efficient with our dollars. We've got a sign shop that's right now in in one of those old portable buildings, that's not indicative of the value that I think that the taxpayers want us to provide. So what are we doing about that? We bought in cash 2 new plots of land in between the appraisal district and East Irwin on the East Loop. Those 2 big buildings out there, Herb Bowie, if he was here, I would thank him again publicly. We did that in Commissioner's Court. He made the county a really great deal, and you guys know what a servant Herb Bowie is. And he did that for us. He gave us a great deal on those 2 pieces of land. We were able to work with the appraisal district to acquire some land behind it so that we can build a road to both of those facilities. And we're going to pay for this all in cash. Some of this we're going to get to use out of the ARPA funds, but we already had the cash set aside by our pay-as-you-go program to pay for capital improvement projects such as this. So in about 18 months, we're going to have a new road and bridge facility on the East Loop, one that can, again, sustain better, efficient, more effective service to the community from a road and bridge standpoint. But that's not all. That's not all we're doing for roads and bridges, because, again, our commitment to you 4 or 5 years ago when we talked about phase 1 was, before we ask you to come alongside us for any other really big projects, we're going to take care of our roads and bridges. So we've planned for the mileage. We've got that fully funded now. We've planned for the facility. We've got that fully funded. It's going to be under construction in about 2 months. But what are we doing long term to solve the problem of, why did we need a bond in the first place? Well, I'll tell you why we needed a bond in the first place. We weren't allocating enough of our revenue out of the general revenue to go to roads and bridges. So we had to correct that problem, and we're doing that. We started out, when I became a judge, 2.94 cents, you see on the left, in fiscal year 15, 2.94 cents was what was allocated by policy out of our existing tax rate that we were going to send over to roads and bridges. Now that manifested about $4 million, almost $2 million. Just wasn't enough to do anything other than really maintenance, and maybe 1 project a year, maybe 2 projects a year. That was it. Wasn't enough to keep pace with what we're doing. So what we were doing without increasing the tax rate is allocating more and more of that tax rate within our total tax rate to go to roads and bridges. And you see what we've already done. We're up to 3.75 cents now, which is going to give us about $7.2 million this year. And projected, if we continue adding about a quarter, and that's the minimum that the court has talked about, is every year let's try to add 25 more basis points to that, and let's try to work up to 5 pennies out of our existing tax rate that we can allocate for roads and bridges. If we do that successfully, our estimation is that we're going to have almost $11 million flowing out in fiscal year 27 to roads and bridges, as opposed to $4 million every year. That is something that can sustain roads and bridges every year without another bond election, unless we have something like a $30 million project. And who knows what the future would hold on that. But as far as our 1,200 miles of road system now, we can reconstruct and repave roads on a regular basis as needed as that grows, because it'll grow with the valuation growth. That's long-term planning. It takes a while to get there, but that's what we're doing for roads and bridges. Again, we're building trust and transparency. Why? Because there's other, harder, sometimes more fun projects we want to get to. And we're going to talk about that today. But first, law and order. There's some great successes in law and order that I want to recognize too in the county. The first is the Texas Anti-Gang Task Force. If you didn't know this is going on, it is going on, and you better be careful. I'm just telling you. I can't tell you what goes on in that building, but I can tell you, I was like, wow, you guys have the ability to find a lot of bad activity that's going on. And it's a conglomerate of a number of agencies that are together, working together. And this is really a lot of what we're doing for border security. When people ask, well, what about border security? Even in Northeast Texas, we can have an impact on that. And this is one of the ways. It's one of the ways because we have great cooperation between a lot of different law enforcement agencies, and the focus is gang activity throughout the state. So we're proud of what they're doing. Here's some of the statistics that they're doing just already. Tons of felony charges, tons of money brought in, tons of drugs seized. You don't want to be involved in the drug trade in Smith County, I guarantee you. They're going to catch you one way or the other. They will. But the second thing that we're doing, and this is thanks to the district attorney, Jacob Putman. And Jacob, if you'll stand up, I want to recognize you for this. You guys, may not realize this, but between him and the legislators that are in the room, they were able to establish this last legislative session a financial crimes intelligence center that is the state center. We're not talking about, well, one of many. No, this is like the state center for all the financial crimes that are going on in this state. And the legislature had to approve the appropriations, and they had to give us the authority to run this center, but it all runs through the DA's office. And it's thanks to his leadership that this is ongoing, and they are killing it already. Look at this. In 2 months, they already had intercepted monetary losses that exceeded the total cost of the entire FCIC, just in 2 months of operation. Now, the state's picking up the tab for this, and we're really happy about that. Really, really happy about that. But even if it weren't, and even if it is, we still need to be good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars that's running through the state and back to us. And they're doing this. And it's just a small team right now, but you're going to hear tons about this in the future because this is just going to grow as more financial institutions realize what we can do for them here. We also have a jail diversion coordinator. Sandy Brazil Hamilton's here, and she's trying to do her best to negotiate that panacea of all the individuals involved in our justice system and help those with mental illnesses in our jail, to get them out, to get them back to where they need to be, to get them onto the state facilities for those that need help at the state level. She advocates and pushes for them all the time, and if you don't know Sandy, she likes to push. Where you at, Sandy? Yeah, we're happy that Sandy's part of that. And I've told her, I said, Sandy, I don't know if anybody else could do this because in truth, you got to have tough skin to be able to go through that process and to deal with so many roadblocks, because there's roadblocks at every turn. But what we have also talked about at the county is we're going to be a no excuse leadership type of county. That's what we're going to be. We're not going to make excuses why things can't get done. We're going to find a way to get them done. And I appreciate her doing that. We also, thanks to talking about getting things done, Senator Brian Hughes is here, Cole Hefner and Matt Schaefer all helped us get a 475th District Court. I think Matt carried that bill in the House, and the Senator carried that bill in the Senate. That got us a new criminal district court. That's going to be appointed by the governor, starts January 1, 2023. And then we'll have an election by the end of 2024 as to who's going to fill that spot. What does that mean? That means more felony criminal trials can happen. And if you've seen the population numbers of our jail, you know that's what we need. We've got about 700 plus pre-trial felonies in our jail of about 1,100 people that are there currently. 700 people that are awaiting trial on a felony charge that can only happen in a district court. We're getting a new one thanks to their efforts at the legislature. So we're excited about that. We're excited to see who the governor is going to appoint to that. That also is going to help us. That provided the opportunity for us to say, all right, well, we've got a plan for that physically. So what we're doing is we're actually moving the 321st Family District Court over to the courthouse annex on the 5th floor. So if you're involved in family court proceedings, probably by the middle of this year, it's all going to happen in the courthouse annex. We're just about done, and this is an actual picture of what used to be the county's workout facility. Now, that's what it used to be. And now on the 5th floor, when you get off, you're going to have the CPS offices on that floor. You're going to have the family court. You're going to have everything contained in that area for this particular instance with the same level of security that you would have at the regular courthouse. But Judge Robert Wilson is going to get an opportunity to really test out a brand new courtroom, which hopefully will be an example of what we can do at the courthouse level in the years to come. And that'll be my final discussion point today. But what about justice? So, and we really are pleased that we were able to do all that maneuvering in a way that we weren't crunched with time. As prior planning will get us there. So, this is, as you guys remember, who was here like 3 years ago? Was it 2019 when we had our last one? that we did this? I think it was 2019. I don't know if you guys remember I ended the whole thing in 2019 by saying, who knows? Remember we were talking about the community commitment report? I mean, we talked about the C's, and I love the letter C apparently because we have tons of C's spread out throughout there. And I said, oh, you know what? Next year come back and we're probably going to talk about something else that starts with a C. I didn't think it would be coronavirus. I had no idea that it would be the coronavirus at all, but about a week before our presentation on the courthouse that we were planning to put on the November 2020 election, that thing hit and we had to postpone it. We were happy to postpone it because it was the right thing to do. But the C I intended to talk about was indeed a courthouse. So I'm going to spend the rest of my time today just talking a little bit about this courthouse project because you're going to hear a lot more about this in the coming months. And I just want to tell you up front, it's my intention to this summer ask the Commissioners Court to put this on the November ballot and to make this a point of decision. We need a decision, we need to move forward, and now is the time to do that. I believe that. But what is so important about a courthouse? I mean, why do you need a courthouse? Well, it's the epicenter of law and justice. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in a courthouse that has significant meaning. When you walked in this building, this is a building with significant meaning, right? When you go to church, you know something with eternal value is going to happen in that facility. When you walk into a courthouse, you know something of great eternal value is going to happen as well. We're talking about people's lives, their freedom, their property. Talking about a lot of serious things. What kind of building do we need to reflect that? Because truly, it is the physical embodiment of the rule of law. And it needs to be a reflection of the value that we place on those things that are going on inside the courtroom. If it's not, then I think we've failed as a community. And quite frankly, I think we've failed as a community. Look at that 1955, that courthouse. That thing was built for 2 trial courtrooms. 2. Within a year, they had to put a 3rd one in there because they didn't have prior planning for long-term logistical growth. Now we have 7 trial courtrooms stuffed in that courthouse. It's not safe and not secure in the manner that it should be. We are doing the best we can, absolutely. But when you got judges walking down the halls and jurors passing them and witnesses passing them, and you got witnesses and criminal defendants and families of both sides in the same bathrooms, in the same narrow hallways, it is not a recipe for justice the way justice should be done. We have 17,000 plus jurors that pass through this courthouse every year. 17,000 jurors. They deserve and demand a safe and secure place to come because they are an integral part of that process. We need them to tell us, should this person go to jail or should they go home? Should somebody be awarded money or should they not? There's a lot of decisions here that have to be made. And those were the 3 prior courthouses that we had. Many of you refer to the 1910 courthouse as the original courthouse. It wasn't. It was like the 4th or 5th. But it lasted 45 years until we put that communist-looking building up in 1955. Can you hear the disdain in my voice? Oh man, I actually met the son of the county judge at that time, and I had a passing meeting with him in Houston years ago when I was practicing law down there, and he said, oh yeah, my dad was the county judge in Smith County, and he told me his dad was a county judge when they knocked that thing down. I said, if I were you, I probably wouldn't come back. I probably wouldn't come back to Smith County. A courthouse needs to be a place. We've done tons of studies going back to 2000. And I'm saying this for those that haven't been here for very long. This is not a new item. This is not just, hey, let's build a nice shiny courthouse. That's not what this is about. This is about filling the need that needs to be addressed from a logistical, from a safety and security perspective, from an administrative perspective. We need to come to a resolution about this. 2000, they came to a plan that said we need one. In 2007, a different group with a different group of commissioners and different consultants came to the same conclusion. Dollar amounts by today's present value were in line with what we had come to in 2020. And those studies keep saying you got to do it. We looked at a bunch of different sites. I don't want you to think we didn't look at a bunch of different sites. You can see all this information. I could talk for an hour about how we got to where we were, and there's tons of workshops we did leading up to our proposal. We've been buying up property for the east side because that's where the Commissioner's Court has said we need to build it on the east side. You see the location. All that orange stuff right there, by the way, is stuff that the county now owns. That's significant. We've been doing that in cash over the past couple of years while we were waiting for the COVID-19 to be done so we could bring this before the community for a vote. We've been trying to be good stewards of your dollars and buy up that property so that you're not stuck in that manner. So that's what it looks like. Fitzpatrick, there you go. Fitzpatrick Architects has done a tremendous job, and I'm telling you, we went through a year's process. If you weren't part of that, I'm sorry you missed that. We can catch you up at a later time, but we went through a whole year's process in public with a ton of public meetings, ton of workshops, meeting with all kinds of elected officials about what we were going to do, and this is the design that we came up with at the end of the day, something that's reminiscent of our great historic courthouse, our 1910 courthouse, but something with the size, safety, and security that we need. So what about safety and security? Because really that's the driving force. You can see that the floors are made around the shape of what needs to happen. You need 3 corridors of traverse. You need one for judicial and staff, you need one for the public, and you need one for the jail and the inmates. And those 3 should never unintentionally cross one another. Right now they do. They have to because of the facility that we're in. But this design right here, this layout of how you can get 4 courtrooms on a floor and have different systems in and out of that courtroom where you have the jail folks bring them in under that tunnel and up from in between the 2 courtrooms and then into the courtrooms from the side and the public coming up the main elevators and in through the main doors, and then the judges and staff having a separate elevator from the basement where they have secure parking, and they get out and walk out to the back where their offices are where nobody can get to, and then they come in the back way to the courtroom. So the courtroom's the only point where all 3 come together, and that's the way it should be. So it's designed around safety and security. Vertically, you have the same thing, and there's big blow-ups of these in the back. Take a look at those and read through those bullets as you get there, as you depart today, because I want you to be aware. Again, I want to say this really, really strongly. We're not looking to build the Taj Mahal. We're not. Neither are we looking to renovate a Walmart shopping center into a courthouse. I don't think that's becoming. Again, it's not the physical embodiment of what goes on in that courtroom, of what happens to those lives. And if that's what we think about that process, I think we need to rethink our value system. And I'm just going to say that bluntly. As a lawyer practicing for 20 years, I think that you have to say we're willing to make an investment in something that reflects the value and the character of our community. And that's what we're trying to give you. And that's what we heard loudly in all of our process. So that was safety and security. That's the front view of what it'll look like. Hopefully close Spring Street there and make a big lawn to Broadway, keep Broadway running through, and not disturb the traffic, but have something this community can be proud of. And by the way, something that logistically, the way we planned for it inside, you can have 12 courtrooms without breaking any walls. So we have, 7 currently in our courthouse. We really need 8 because we've got this new court coming on, and an auxiliary courtroom would make 9. You're going to need a statutory county court of law in the next 10 years. That makes 10. In the next 10 years, you're going to need 10 courtrooms. We've made a provision. You can expand it to 2 more without any question. We're going to shell out some space and just be able to build that when we need it. Logistically, that gets us through 75 years of growth. Logistically, the building's going to stand way past that, hundreds of years. But we can grow logistically and never knock down a wall. in that facility. We've created space to grow in the DA's office as you add more lawyers to take care of the more cases that go with the more courts. Same with the district clerk and the county clerk space. We've provided enough growth space so that you're not having to come back in 10 years and say, well, we've outgrown this already. No, you're not going to have to do this. We're going to make provision for that so that you can grow, and this is something that you can have for a long time. Oh, let me go back to that. So this is the image I want to leave you with today, and then I want to leave you with these thoughts again. When I think about a courthouse and why we need a courthouse, I mention the words reverence and respect, but the words citizenship and community come to mind as well. Justice and mercy, both equally, law and order equally, safety and security. Those concepts are intangible concepts, and you say, well, what kind of dollar figure can we put on this? I'm going to tell you it's not going to be cheap. It's not cheap. It's value-based. We made it as small as possible for what the needs of the community are, and we will talk in depth about this in the summer if the commissioners allow this to go forward in the November election. I guarantee we'll have tons of meetings. But I want to preface this summer by saying this is my intention. We've got goals to get done. We've been doing our road and bridge business the way you wanted us to do it. I hope we've been good stewards of that. And now I'm going to ask you before November gets here to give us the opportunity to be good stewards on building something that is for our Justice Center. Now is the time. Joshua 1:9 says, have I not commanded you? Do not be frightened. Do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God goes before you wherever you go. I've been meditating on that the past month, especially thinking, I'm so glad he didn't say, I'm going to go wherever you go except Washington, D.C. I'm so glad. I'm so glad about that. But now is the time to be strong and courageous, because it's going to be a community effort. It can't be the commissioner's court. Once we call the bond election, it's out of our hands, and then it's up to advocacy groups. It's up to you to decide, is this what you want or not? We've listened to you. We're going to propose a plan that we think is the plan you want, the style that you want, the location you want, the cost that you want. We're trying to do exactly what you guys wanted for the last 25 years, as we've heard from the community. But it's going to require courage and strength to do that. Transformational change awaits. It awaits for every one of us, and I believe this is a time for transformational change. I'm going to end with a quote from President Reagan, and then I'm going to show you a video that Brandy and Steve put together. Brandy and Steve, are you guys in here? I didn't see you on the way in here. Where are you at? If you guys are in here. Yes. Stand up for a second. Brandy and Steve. It takes visionaries to do something transformational. Those two people are visionaries, and they're transforming what we have in this community, and they're giving us an opportunity to do something great, and thank you for that. I'm going to end with a quote, and then we're going to show a video. Then Commissioner Judge-elect Neil Franklin is going to come up here and say a few words before we get dismissed. But here's the quote from President Reagan. The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to the brave. So be strong, be courageous, and be brave. Thank you.